What if you awoke each dawn not to the comfort of modern security, but to the shadowy perils of 12th century London? Your hard-earned wealth as a successful wool merchant hangs by a thread, threatened by cunning rivals slipping poison into your wine, corrupt officials demanding bribes that bleed your coffers dry, and gangs of thieves lurking in the fog-shrouded alleys, ready to torch your warehouse and plunge you back into destitution. In this episode of Surviving the Feudal Age, immerse yourself in the high-stakes world of the merchant class under Henry II's Plantagenet rule. Here, success brings not peace, but a relentless battle against betrayal, debt, and disaster. Feel the weight of silver pennies in your purse, the chill of the Thames mist on your skin, and the constant whisper of danger in every negotiation. Settle in, dim the lights, and let this soothing, historically rich tale guide you through the trials of medieval survival. It's perfect for drifting into deep, restful sleep as you experience the intrigue from the safety of your own bed. Relax, breathe deeply, and let the story begin. You wake up in your dimly lit bedchamber above the warehouse, the faint glow of a rushlight flickering against the timber walls as the tolling of matins bells from St. Paul's Cathedral pierces the pre-dawn silence, jolting you from uneasy slumber with immediate fears of overnight theft or sabotage by envious rivals who might have slipped past your barred doors. The air is thick with the musty scent of stored wool bales seeping up from below, mingled with the damp chill of London's fog that creeps through the cracks in the shuttered windows, reminding you of the Thames's relentless humidity that could rot your precious inventory if not vigilantly guarded. Your heart races as you sit up on the straw-stuffed mattress, covered in a worn woolen blanket woven from your own trade goods, your mind already churning through the vulnerabilities of your hard-won prosperity. The hidden strongbox holds your silver pennies and groats. The apprentices might turn disloyal for a farthing's bribe. The competitors in Cheapside whisper of undercutting your prices on dyed fleeces. You swing your legs over the bed's edge, feeling the rough wooden floorboards creak under your bare feet. Their splinters a minor peril compared to the greater threats that loom in the shadowy world of 12th century commerce under Henry II's rule, where a single misfortune could strip you of everything and cast you back among the beggars you once pitied. With a deep breath, you invoke a silent prayer to Saint Homobonus, patron of merchants, beseeching protection from the cutthroats and schemers that infest the city's alleys, your fingers tracing the wooden cross hanging from your neck as you steel yourself for the day's battles. The distant cry of a night watchman echoes outside, a reminder of the fragile order enforced by beadles and sheriffs. Yet you know their corruption often favors the highest bidder, leaving honest traders like you exposed. The water's icy bite sharpens your senses, heightening your awareness of every sound. The rustle of rats in the rafters, the faint drip from a leaky roof that could invite mold to your dyes imported from distant Genoa. Your thoughts turn to the ledgers, awaiting scrutiny downstairs, where discrepancies might reveal embezzlement by those you trust, or worse, forged entries planted by rivals to invite guild audits that could levy crippling fines. The weight of survival presses upon you, not the starvation of the destitute, but the insidious erosion of wealth through deceit and disaster, where every dawn demands unyielding vigilance. You hurriedly dress in your fine but stained woolen tunic and hose, the fabric's rich crimson dye, a product of your own imports, clinging slightly to your skin with the residue of yesterday's sweat and market dust as you descend the narrow, creaking staircase to your counting house. The air grows heavier with the earthy aroma of stacked fleeces and the sharp tang of indigo vats that permeate the warehouse below. Your footsteps echo softly on the worn oak steps, each one a measured caution against the lurking dangers of your trade, where a slip in the dim light could mean a twisted ankle, leaving you bedridden and vulnerable to opportunistic thieves or neglected business that spirals into debt. Reaching the counting house, a small room partitioned by heavy curtains, you light a tallow candle with a flint striker, its smoky flame casting wavering shadows over the cluttered desk piled with parchment ledgers, quills, and an abacus of bone beads, tools essential for tracking the silver pennies and farthings that flow through your dealings in exported fleeces to Flemish weavers. You settle onto the hard stool, its uneven legs wobbling on the flagstone floor, and open the primary ledger, your eyes scanning columns of entries inscribed in faded ink. You search meticulously for signs of embezzlement, perhaps a misplaced groat or an inflated expense, that could signal betrayal by an apprentice or clerk, knowing that even a minor discrepancy might provoke ruinous audits from guild enforcers who demand perfection or extract hefty bribes to overlook irregularities. The chill of the room seeps into your bones, a reminder of the fuel costs you ration to preserve profits, as outside the first hints of dawn filter through the barred window, illuminating the bustling potential of Cheapside, where competitors lurk, ready to exploit any weakness. Your fingers trace the figures, calculating yesterday's trades, a shipment of raw wool sold at Billingsgate for 12 pennies per bale, minus the tolls and porter's fees that nibble at your margins like persistent vermin. A knot forms in your stomach as you spot a subtle anomaly, a delivery noted as received but not inventoried, igniting fears of internal theft or sabotage, perils that have bankrupted lesser merchants under Henry II's indifferent gaze, where the feudal system's hierarchies offer little protection to the rising middle class. You pause to rub your temples, the headache from constant worry, a familiar companion, and whisper a plea to the Virgin Mary for clarity, the small icon on the wall, watching over your labors with painted serenity. The sounds of the awakening city intrude, the clatter of carts on cobbled streets, the distant call of vendors setting up stalls urging you to hasten. Yet you methodically cross-check with receipts crumpled in a wooden box, each one a fragile barrier against fraud. The texture of the parchment under your hands, rough and uneven, grounds you in the tangible risks of your world, where paper-thin trust can tear under pressure from corrupt officials or envious peers. As you close the ledger with a soft thud, satisfied for now but ever suspicious, you feel the weight of survival shift from mere sustenance to safeguarding fortune, a transformation that brings new terrors like the specter of imprisonment for unpaid debts, or the loss of guild membership that would isolate you in this cutthroat economy. Rising from the desk, you extinguish the candle to save tallow, plunging the room into gloom, and move toward the door leading to your modest hall, where your family awaits, their faces etched with the shared anxiety of a life balanced on the edge of prosperity and ruin. You share a tense breakfast of stale bread and watery ale with your anxious family in the modest hall adjoining the warehouse, the room's half-timbered walls adorned with simple tapestries that do little to ward off the morning chill seeping from the Thames mists. You debate how to afford dowries for your daughters amid rising costs that threaten to plunge you back into the poverty you clawed your way out of years ago. Seated at the scarred oak table, scarred from countless meals and the occasional spill of dye samples, you tear into the crusty loaf baked the day before in a communal oven down the lane, its slightly moldy edge, a concession to thrift that spares precious pennies for bribes or repairs, while your wife pours the thin ale from an earthenware jug, her hands calloused from managing the household on a merchant's precarious budget. Your children, 2 daughters on the cusp of marriageable age and a young son apprenticed to your trade, sit quietly, their eyes reflecting the unspoken fears that permeate your home, where whispers of market fluctuations or rival machinations can turn abundance to scarcity overnight. The air carries the faint scent of wood smoke from the small hearth fire, crackling meagerly with logs you haggled for at Smithfield, and the underlying odor of wool grease that clings to everything, a constant reminder of the source of your wealth and its vulnerabilities. As you chew the tough bread, dipped in ale to soften it, you discuss the escalating demands of social climbing, the need for fine gowns and jewelry to secure alliances with wealthier families, expenses that drain your coffers already strained by guild fees, and the occasional gift to beadles who patrol Ludgate with eyes for easy marks. Your wife's voice trembles slightly as she tallies the figures on her fingers, 50 groats for a suitable match, perhaps more if rumors of your recent losses circulate, highlighting how inflation under Henry II's rule, fueled by wars and taxes, erodes the value of your silver-like river water-wearing stone. You nod gravely, feeling the knot of anxiety tighten in your chest, knowing that failure to provide dowries could doom your daughters to spinsterhood or lowly unions, unraveling the family legacy you've built from nothing. The boy fidgets with his wooden spoon, eager yet frightened by tales of workplace perils you've shared, accidents in the dye vats or thefts that lead to floggings, while outside the church bells ring for prime, marking the inexorable passage of time in this medieval rhythm, dictated by saints' days and royal edicts. You offer a small prayer of thanks to St. Christopher for safe travels in your mind, even as you outline contingency plans, selling a bale of premium fleece at a loss if needed, or seeking a loan from Lombard Street moneylenders whose usurious rates could ensnare you in endless debt. The meal's simplicity underscores the survival tightrope you walk, not the gnawing hunger of the destitute, but the calculated rationing that preserves capital against disasters like shipwrecks or embargoes. As conversation lulls, you wipe your mouth with a linen napkin, the fabrics weave a modest luxury, and rise to face the streets, leaving your family with instructions to bar the doors against intruders, their worried gazes following you as you step into the hall's doorway, the day's mounting pressures already building like storm clouds over the Plantagenet realm. You venture into the foggy streets of Cheapside, the morning mist swirling around your ankles like ghostly tendrils as you clutch your purse tightly beneath your woolen cloak, its weight of silver pennies a constant reminder of the wealth that makes you a prime target for the shadowy figures lurking in the narrow alleys and doorways of 12th century London. The cobbled pavement, slick with overnight dew and the remnants of yesterday's refuse, squelches under your leather-soled shoes, each step echoing faintly amid the awakening clamor of vendors crying their wares and carts rumbling over stones, heightening your senses to the perils that transform a simple walk into a gauntlet of survival. Your eyes dart to every passer-by, a hunched beggar extending a grimy hand, a group of apprentices jostling with rough laughter, a cloaked stranger whose gaze lingers too long. You're aware that pickpockets and cutpurses, swift as falcons, prey on merchants like you for quick, devastating robberies that could strip away months of hard-earned profits in an instant. The air hangs heavy with the mingled scents of baking bread from nearby ovens, the acrid smoke of forges firing up for the day, and the underlying rot of the gutters overflowing with waste, a sensory assault that mirrors the chaotic threats of urban life under Henry II's rule, where the feudal order offers scant protection to those rising through trade. You weave through the thickening crowd, your hand never leaving the concealed dagger at your belt, a modest weapon permitted to freemen, but no match for organized gangs that haunt these thoroughfares, their blades drawn for purses or worse. The spires of St. Mary le Bow rise in the distance, their bells tolling for terce and calling the faithful to prayer, yet you pause only briefly to mutter an invocation to St. Nicholas, protector against thieves, as the press of bodies around you evokes memories of past brushes with danger. A snatched satchel here, a slashed cloak there, left scars on your fortunes, if not your flesh. Shadowy figures melt into the fog as you approach, but paranoia grips you, wondering if they are scouts for larger threats, perhaps hired by rivals envious of your wool and dye empire, plotting to undermine you through street-level sabotage. The marketplace stirs fully now, stalls laden with cheeses, spices, and cloths unfurling like colorful banners, tempting you with opportunities, yet fraught with risks of counterfeit coins or tainted goods that could poison your dealings. Your breath comes in measured puffs, visible in the chill air, as you navigate past a beadle eyeing you suspiciously, his staff, a symbol of authority that often bends to bribes rather than justice, forcing you to weigh the cost of a preemptive farthing against the humiliation of a false accusation. The weight of your purse pulls at your side, a burdensome treasure that invites envy, and you quicken your pace toward the Thames banks, the river's murmur growing audible through the haze, promising the safety of your warehouse, but only after this treacherous passage. As you emerge from a narrow wynd, the fog lifts slightly to reveal the bustling heart of Cheapside, where survival demands eternal vigilance against the human predators blending seamlessly with honest folk. You inspect your Thames-side warehouse, the massive oak doors creaking open under your push to reveal stacks of crates and bales shrouded in the dim light, filtering through high barred windows, only to discover water damage seeping through a precious crate of indigo dyes. The dark stains spread like insidious veins that force you to calculate losses capable of erasing months of profits and attracting opportunistic creditors eager to pounce on any sign of weakness. The air inside is thick with the pungent aroma of damp wool and fermented dyes, mingled with the brackish scent of the river just beyond the stone walls, where the constant lap of waves against the pilings serves as a grim reminder of floods that have ruined lesser merchants in this precarious location near Billingsgate. Kneeling beside the afflicted crate, your fingers probe the sodden wood, feeling the softened fibers give way, and you pry it open with a crowbar, the tool's iron bite echoing in the vast space as blue powder clumps in ruinous lumps, tainted by moisture that likely infiltrated during last night's storm, a common peril in 12th century London's unpredictable climate under Plantagenet skies. Your mind races through arithmetic, tallying the cost, imported from Genoa at 20 groats per pound. This batch alone represents 100 pennies invested, now halved in value if salvable at all, a blow that could cascade into delayed shipments and broken contracts with weavers relying on your vibrant hues. Apprentices hover nearby, their faces pale in the gloom, whispering among themselves as you bark orders to unpack and assess, fearing their carelessness in securing the tabs might be the culprit, though sabotage by rivals slipping bribes to porters crosses your thoughts, heightening the paranoia that shadows every success. The warehouse's timber beams overhead groan faintly with the wind, dotted with cobwebs and the skitter of rats that gnaw at bindings, adding to the litany of threats, fire from unattended lanterns, theft through unsecured vents that demand ceaseless oversight in this hub of your trade empire. You rise, wiping blue-stained hands on your tunic, the residue a sticky testament to fortune's fragility, and pace the flagstone floor worn smooth by years of labor, mentally summoning ledgers to adjust, subtract the loss, defer payments to suppliers, perhaps sell at a discount to recoup something before word spreads and creditors like those in Lombard Street descend with demands for collateral. The distant church bells of St. Magnus toll for sext, marking midday's approach in the medieval rhythm. Yet time feels suspended in this crisis, where survival hinges not on brute strength, but on cunning calculations amid the guild's strict monopolies and royal taxes that nibble at margins. Muttering a prayer to St. Homobonus for mercy on your endeavors, you direct the lads to isolate the damaged goods, their grunts and the scrape of crates, a symphony of urgency, while outside the Thames churns muddily, carrying barges laden with competitors' wares that mock your setback. The weight of impending debt presses like a vise, inviting visions of bailiffs seizing your home if unpaid. A descent back to the struggling worker you once were, but you steel yourself, plotting salvage strategies amid the sensory haze of decay and determination. You haggle fiercely with a shifty Flemish supplier at Billingsgate docks, the chaotic wharf alive with the shouts of fishermen unloading silvery catches and the creak of ships' rigging straining against the tide. As you suspect, counterfeit weights on the wool bales he offers. You know a bad deal might saddle you with worthless goods and unpayable debts that could unravel your entire mercantile existence in 12th century London. Standing amid the slick planks, slick with fish scales and river spray, you eye the burly merchant from Bruges, his bearded face etched with cunning as he gestures to the stacked bales, their coarse fibers protruding like unkempt hair, while the briny scent of the Thames mingles with the earthy musk of fresh sheared wool, assaulting your nostrils in this bustling gateway of trade under Henry II's expansive realm. Your voice rises in feigned outrage as you demand to test the scales, producing your own lead weights from a pouch at your belt, stamped with guild marks to ensure fairness, aware that discrepancies could mean stones hidden in the bundles, a common trick that has bankrupted trusting traders and left them begging at church doors. The supplier counters with smooth lies, his accent thick as he claims the wool's superior quality from Flemish pastures, but your instincts, honed by years of survival in cutthroat markets, detect the evasion in his darting eyes and the subtle shift of his stance. This prompts you to probe a bale with a bodkin, feeling for inconsistencies that might reveal short measure or damp rot concealed within. Around you, the dock teems with porters heaving crates, their grunts punctuating the negotiation, while gulls screech overhead, diving for scraps in a mimicry of the opportunistic grabs that define commerce here, where royal customs officials lurk, ready to levy extra tolls on disputed goods. You calculate swiftly in your head. At 4 pennies per bale, a full shipment of 50 would cost 200 farthings, but if underweight by even a tenth, the loss compounds with resale, inviting lawsuits or guild fines that drain your strongbox like a leaking cask. Invoking Saint Evo for justice in dealings, you whisper a quick prayer under your breath, the wooden cross at your neck, a talisman against deceit, as the bells from nearby All Hallows toll for nons, urging haste before the market shifts and values plummet. The Fleming relents slightly, offering a minor discount, but you press harder, threatening to walk to a rival supplier, your heart pounding with the gamble. Success means bolstered inventory for export, failure, a chain of defaults rippling to your family's ruin. The negotiation drags amid the sensory tumult, the slap of waves against hulls, the tang of salt on your lips, the rough texture of wool under your palms as you inspect, each detail amplifying the stakes in this dance of survival where wealth hangs by threads of trust. Finally, terms inch toward agreement, but suspicion lingers, a shadow over the deal that could fester into disaster if the bales prove fraudulent upon unpacking, leaving you to ponder contingencies as you seal the pact with a reluctant handshake. You face down a menacing beadle, extorting a hefty bribe to ignore fabricated infractions. As you make your way back from the docks toward your warehouse, the burly official in his threadbare livery stepping into your path on the crowded quayside of Billingsgate. His staff thumps the wooden planks like a judge's gavel, demanding a fine in silver pennies that drains your purse or risks imprisonment in the grim depths of Newgate, where merchants like you rot amid thieves and debtors under Henry II's harsh justice. The air buzzes with the chaos of unloading ships, sailors shouting in foreign tongues, the splash of oars in the Thames, the metallic clang of anchors. Yet your focus narrows on the beadle's sneering face, pockmarked and flushed, his breath reeking of cheap ale as he accuses you of overloading carts in violation of guild ordinances. A lie spun from thin air to line his pockets in this corrupt web of 12th century law enforcement. Your hand instinctively tightens on your coin pouch, feeling the weight of hard-earned groats that could feed your family for weeks, now poised to vanish into this extortionist's grasp. This forces a grim calculation. Pay the 10 pennies he demands and preserve your freedom, or refuse and invite a trumped-up arrest that shutters your business, leaving apprentices idle and shipments rotting while you languish in chains. The beadle's eyes gleam with predatory anticipation, his fingers twitching as if already counting your tribute, a common peril for successful traders navigating the feudal hierarchies where sheriffs and watchmen wield power like petty tyrants, often in league with rivals who tip them off for a share. You stand firm on the slick boards, the river's chill spray misting your face, invoking a silent prayer to St. Thomas Becket for strength against oppression. The martyr's recent canonization, a fresh symbol of resistance in London's churches, tolling for vespers in the distance. Bargaining begins in hushed tones, you offering half the sum with feigned humility, citing lean times and royal taxes that already bleed merchants dry, while he counters with threats of summoning witnesses to fabricate evidence, escalating the standoff amid the sensory tumult of fishmongers hawking their slimy wares and gulls wheeling overhead. The texture of your woolen sleeve brushes your arm as you reach for the coins, each one a cold, ridged disc representing hours of haggling and risk. Their clink in his palm, a bitter sound that echoes the erosion of your fortunes through such institutionalized theft. Paranoia whispers that this encounter might be orchestrated by competitors envious of your dye imports, using officials as proxies to hobble you without dirtying their hands. As the beadle pockets the reduced bribe with a grunt, stepping aside to let you pass, relief mingles with resentment, knowing this. Protection is fleeting, and another shakedown lurks around the next corner in this survival game where wealth invites predation. You hurry onward, the warehouse's outline emerging through the haze, your steps quickened by the day's mounting tolls on body and spirit. You oversee apprentices in the warehouse, barking orders to sort fleeces amid the choking dust that billows like smoke from the stacked bales, your voice echoing off the high rafters as you fear workplace accidents or deliberate mishandling that could spark fires capable of destroying your entire stock in a blaze that engulfs the timber structure. Such a fire would reduce your mercantile dreams to ashes in 12th century London's flammable sprawl near the Thames. The cavernous space hums with activity, young lads heaving wool bundles onto sorting tables, their grimy faces streaked with sweat and fibers, while the air thickens with the itchy particles that irritate your throat and eyes, a constant hazard in this trade, where a single cough near an open lantern might ignite catastrophe amid the dry, oily fleeces piled high like precarious towers. You pace the flagstone floor, worn smooth by countless footsteps, pointing with a stern finger at a mis-sorted bale, coarse lowland wool mixed with finer upland grades. You demand precision to maintain quality for export, knowing errors invite customer complaints and lost contracts that cascade into debt under the guild's unforgiving monopolies enforced by Henry II's courts. The boys nod obediently, their tunics damp with exertion, but suspicion lingers in your mind. Is that lanky one dawdling on purpose, perhaps bribed by rivals to sow discord, or merely careless in a way that could topple a stack onto a candle, unleashing flames that spread faster than prayer? The scent of lanolin clings to everything, greasy and pervasive, mingling with the faint metallic tang of tools scattered about, shears, hooks and scales, each a potential spark if mishandled in this dimly lit realm where rushlights flicker precariously on walls. You invoke St. Florian under your breath, patron against fire, as church bells from St. Paul's toll for Compline, signaling evening's approach in the medieval cadence that structures your vigilant days. A sudden clatter draws your ire, a dropped hook skittering across the stones. You reprimand sharply, reminding them of past disasters whispered in taverns, warehouses gutted overnight, owners beggared and families scattered, perils amplified by the city's dense half-timbered buildings prone to conflagration. Your hands gesture emphatically, calloused from years of labor, directing the workflow with the authority of a master who rose from similar drudgery, yet ever aware that disloyalty festers like mold in damp wool, tempting apprentices to pilfer or sabotage for a rival's farthing. The dust settles momentarily as you inspect a sorted pile, fingers sifting through the soft strands, assessing texture and cleanliness, each bale a fragile link in your chain of survival, where quality commands premiums but flaws invite ruin. As the lads resume, grunting with effort, you scan for hazards, a loose nail, an oily rag. Your heart pounds with the relentless anxiety of guardianship, where one lapse could invite the sheriff's inquiry into negligent losses. The warehouse doors stand ajar for ventilation, admitting the river's murmur, but you order them secured against intruders, balancing airflow with security in this tightrope of mercantile endurance. You attend a contentious guild meeting in the nearby hall off Cheapside, the stone chamber filled with the murmur of fellow merchants in embroidered robes, as you maneuver through backstabbing alliances, where rivals plot to undermine your trade routes with whispered schemes that risk your exclusion from vital networks. Such exclusion would starve your enterprise of Flemish connections and continental markets in the cutthroat commerce of 12th century London, under Plantagenet oversight. Seated on a hard bench amid the assembly, the air heavy with the scent of beeswax candles guttering in iron sconces and the faint spice of imported wines served in pewter goblets, you listen intently to the master guildsman's droning agenda. Your eyes scan faces for allies and foes, the portly clothier who smiles falsely, the lean dyer whose glare betrays envy of your indigo monopoly. The hall's vaulted ceiling echoes with heated debates over tariffs and quotas, each word a potential dagger as competitors lobby to restrict access to ports like Billingsgate, a move that could isolate your wool exports and force ruinous detours through bandit-plagued roads. You rise to speak, voice steady despite the knot in your stomach, defending your fair practices against veiled accusations of undercutting prices. Knowing a lost vote might brand you an outcast, barred from collective bargaining that shields against royal edicts and foreign embargoes. The texture of your seat's rough wool cushion irritates faintly, a minor discomfort amid the sensory press of body heat and the crackle of parchments being consulted, documents outlining alliances that shift like Thames tides. Invoking St. Homer bonus silently for honest dealings, as the bells of St. Mary Le Beau toll outside for matins echo in memory, you forge tentative pacts with a few trusted peers, exchanging nods over shared fears of Henry II's wars draining coffers through forced loans. Yet paranoia thrives. That whispered conversation in the corner, is it plotting to poach your suppliers or spread rumors of your insolvency? Tactics that have toppled merchants into debtors' prison. The meeting drags, resolutions passing by slim margins, your input swaying a key point on dye imports, but victory feels hollow amid the undercurrents of betrayal, where a false friend could leak your routes to pirates or bribe officials against you. As discussions wane, you sip the watered wine, its tartness sharpening your wits, calculating the evening's gains against losses, new contacts versus heightened enmities, in this survival arena where guild solidarity masks individual ambitions. The chamber's tapestries depict prosperous trades, ironic against the real perils of exclusion that could reduce you to peddling scraps in Smithfield, like the struggling workers you surpassed. Rising as the gathering adjourns, handshakes exchanged with guarded smiles, you step into the cooling street, mind racing with strategies to counter the threats unveiled, your position fortified yet forever precarious in the web of mercantile intrigue. You snatch a hurried midday meal of cold pottage in a crowded tavern near Cheapside, the dimly lit room packed with raucous labourers and merchants hunched over scarred wooden tables as you eavesdrop on chilling rumours of plague outbreaks sweeping from the docks. These outbreaks could quarantine your goods in rotting warehouses and bankrupt you overnight, leaving your family to starve amid the merciless streets of 12th century London. The thick, congealed stew, lumps of barley and wilted vegetables swimming in a greasy broth, slides down your throat like a reluctant swallow. Its bland chill, a far cry from the warm feasts of nobles, yet you force it in, knowing skipped meals weaken the body against the very pestilences whispered about in hushed tones around you. The air reeks of unwashed bodies, sour ale spilled on rushes strewn across the dirt floor, and the acrid smoke from a sputtering hearth fire that casts flickering shadows, amplifying the dread as a grizzled sailor at the next bench mutters of black boils and sudden deaths in Flemish ports. These are ports from which your wool shipments arrive, igniting visions of sealed crates condemned by royal decree, their contents festering while creditors hammer at your door. Your spoon clatters against the earthenware bowl, hands trembling slightly from the morning's exertions as you strain to catch fragments of conversation. The Black Death's cousin, one says, quarantines lasting months, goods burned to ash. These words twist your gut like a knife, for a single infected bale could trigger inspections by beadles, forcing you to bribe or flee, either path draining your silver pennies into oblivion. The tavern's clamour, dice rolling, tankards clanging, a fiddler's mournful tune drowns out your racing thoughts momentarily, but paranoia surges. Is that cough from the corner a harbinger or mere ale-induced hack? You invoke Saint Roche under your breath, protector against plague, as church bells from St. Paul's toll for nonnes, marking the day's midpoint in this relentless medieval grind where survival teeters on health's fragile edge. The pottage sits heavy in your stomach, a meager bulwark against hunger. Yet you eat mechanically, eyes darting to patrons who might carry contagion or spy for rivals eager to exploit your downfall. Brutal images flood your mind. Corpses carted through streets, your warehouse padlocked by sheriffs, auctions stripping your possessions while your children beg like the destitute you once were. Perils amplified by Henry II's indifferent rule, where merchants bear the brunt of epidemics without noble protections. As the rumors swirl, confirming outbreaks in nearby wards, you rise abruptly, wiping your mouth on your sleeve. The fabric's dye-stained threads, a reminder of your vulnerable trade, and push through the throng toward the door, the weight of impending catastrophe urging you onward to secure what little defenses you can muster against this invisible reaper. You negotiate a high-interest loan from a ruthless moneylender in Lombard Street, the narrow lane lined with counting houses, where Italian bankers in fur-trimmed robes eye you like prey as you sign away, collateral that includes your home and warehouse. You know default means forfeiture and destitution for your family, casting you into the brutal gutters of 12th century London, where failed merchants scrape for crusts amid the indifferent Plantagenet regime. Seated in the dimly lit chamber, its air thick with the metallic scent of ink and the musty odor of stacked parchments, you face the lender, a sharp-featured Lombard with calculating eyes, across a table scarred from countless desperate dealings. His quill scratches terms that demand repayment at 20% usury, a rate that could double your debt in months if trade falters. Your fingers grip the document, feeling the rough texture of vellum under your palm as you haggle futilely for leniency, citing recent losses from damaged dies and bribes. But he counters with cold indifference, reminding you of peers who've hanged themselves from rafters when unable to pay, their families evicted to freeze in alleys patrolled by watchmen who offer no mercy. The room's single tallow candle flickers, casting elongated shadows that mirror the elongated shadows of ruin looming over you, while outside the muffled toll of bells from St. Mary Abchurch signals the afternoon's progression, urging haste in this dance of survival, where borrowing is a necessary poison to fuel expansions amid guild monopolies and royal taxes. Paranoia grips you. Clauses hidden in Latin script might ensnare further, or spies could report your vulnerability to rivals plotting takeovers, amplifying the brutality of a system where the church condemns usury yet turns a blind eye to its necessities. You sign with a trembling hand, the ink's sharp smell biting your nostrils, sealing the pact that mortgages your bedchamber, your children's future, against the promise of funds to restock fleeces. Yet visions assault you of bailiffs seizing doors, your wife weeping as possessions are carted away, your body flogged for debts in the pillory at Smithfield. The lender's smile, thin as a blade, seals the deal as he counts out groats into your pouch, each coin a chain link binding you tighter, knowing one failed shipment from piracy or embargo could trigger the cascade, interest compounding like plague sores, foreclosure swift and unforgiving. Rising from the stool, legs heavy with dread, you mutter a prayer to St. Matthew for financial grace. The icon on the wall, a hollow comfort in this den of fiscal predators where survival demands gambling your all against fortune's cruel whims. The door creaks open to the street's bustle, but the weight of the loan clings like shackles, propelling you toward your cellar with heightened urgency to safeguard what remains. You check your hidden strongbox in the damp cellar beneath your warehouse, descending the slick stone steps into the chill gloom, where water drips from arched ceilings like insidious tears, counting groats with trembling hands amid paranoia about servants or intruders discovering and plundering your life's savings. Such a theft could plunge you into irreversible ruin in the brutal underbelly of 12th century London's mercantile wars. The air down here is heavy with mildew and the faint rot of earth, the flickering lantern in your grasp casting erratic shadows on moss-covered walls, illuminating the concealed nook behind loose bricks where the iron-bound chest lurks, its locks rusted yet sturdy against the constant humidity seeping from the nearby Thames. Kneeling on the cold, uneven flagstones that bite into your knees, you fumble with the key hidden in your boot, its jagged teeth scraping as it turns, the mechanism's groan echoing like a warning in this subterranean vault where every sound amplifies fears of eavesdroppers. Perhaps a disgruntled apprentice lurks above, or burglars tunnel from adjacent cellars, drawn by rumors of your prosperity. Coins spill into your palms, cold and heavy, each groat and penny a hard-won trophy from endless hagglings, yet you tally them meticulously by the lantern's smoky light, fingers numb from the dank chill, verifying against mental ledgers to detect any shortfall that might signal pilfering, a betrayal that has shattered families and driven merchants to despairing leaps from London Bridge. The scent of tarnished silver mingles with the musty dampness, a sensory reminder of wealth's fragility in Henry II's realm, where no royal guard protects the middling class from nocturnal raids by gangs wielding picks and daggers, leaving victims bloodied and beggared. Paranoia surges as a rat skitters in the darkness, its beady eyes glinting like a spy's, prompting visions of servants bribed with farthings to reveal your hoard, or rivals hiring assassins to slit throats for keys, brutal realities whispered in taverns, where tales of gutted cellars and murdered owners serve as cautions. You stack the coins back, each clink a heartbeat of anxiety, securing the lid with triple locks forged by trusted smiths, yet doubt lingers. Is the hiding spot compromised, inviting a midnight breach that strips you bare? Invoking Saint Dismas for protection of treasures, you rise unsteadily, lantern swaying to reveal puddles reflecting your weary face, the day's tolls etching deeper lines as church bells toll faintly above for vespers. The ascent feels laborious, legs aching from the crouch, but resolve hardens. Survival demands such vigilance, fortifying against the savage threats that turn fortune into a fortress under siege. Emerging into the warehouse's relative warmth, you bar the cellar door, mind already turning to the next negotiation's perils. You battle a cunning weaver in price negotiations for dyed wool at your shop front in Cheapside, the afternoon sun casting long shadows through the open shutters as you detect his attempts to shortchange you with sleight-of-hand substitutions of inferior threads. Losing the upper hand could cascade into lost customers and mounting losses that unravel your fragile empire in the ruthless markets of 12th century London. Seated across a cluttered counter laden with vibrant samples, crimson reds from madder root, deep blues from indigo, the weaver, a wiry man with calloused hands and a sly grin, pushes forward a bundle claiming premium quality. But your trained eye spots the uneven dye and coarse weave, tricks that could pass to the untrained but spell disaster for your reputation if resold to discerning clothiers. The air hums with the bustle of the street outside, vendors hawking pies, the clop of horses on cobbles, the distant hammer of smiths. Yet your focus sharpens on this duel of words, haggling over pennies per ell as he understates weights on his scales, a common ploy that nibbles at margins like vermin in grain sacks. Your voice rises firmly, demanding reweighing with your own balanced beam, feeling the smooth wood under your fingers as counterweights clink, exposing the shortfall that ignites his feigned outrage, a performance to pressure concessions amid the sensory press of wool's greasy lanolin scent, mingling with the sharp tang of dyes. Paranoia whispers that he's in league with competitors, testing your resolve to spread word of your unfairness, eroding client trust in a guild where whispers can blacklist traders overnight, leaving warehouses empty and families destitute under Henry II's indifferent gaze. You counter with evidence, unrolling a sample to reveal flaws, faded patches from poor fixing, threads snapping under tension. Each defect is a potential lawsuit if passed on, amplifying the stakes where a bad batch could trigger returns, refunds draining your strongbox like a breached dam. The weaver relents slightly, offering a meager discount, but you press harder, invoking market rates from recent Flemish imports, your heart pounding with the gamble. Yield too much, and profits evaporate. Stand firm and risk him walking to rivals, starving your supply chain. Church bells from nearby St. Vedas toll faintly, marking the hour's passage in this medieval rhythm. Urging resolution before dusk invites thieves. Sweat beads on your brow, despite the cooling breeze. The negotiation, a brutal chess of survival, where every farthing defended shields against bankruptcy's abyss. As terms edge toward agreement, suspicion lingers, a shadow over the deal that could fester if the wool proves subpar upon full inspection, prompting you to note details meticulously on parchment. With the pact sealed in reluctant nods, you watch him depart, bundle under arm, mind already calculating contingencies for betrayal. You diffuse a heated confrontation with a jealous competitor claiming territorial infringement outside your warehouse, the evening shadows lengthening along the Thames banks as he accuses you of poaching his clients with underpriced fleeces. You dodge his veiled threats of violence or arson, that haunt successful traders like spectres in the flammable timber warrens of 12th century London. The rival, a burly dyer with reddened hands and a scowling face, blocks your path on the muddy quay, his voice booming over the river's gentle lap and the cries of watermen ferrying goods, demanding recompense for stolen contracts that you know were won fairly through superior quality. Yet his fury masks the desperation of a failing business eager to drag you down. The air carries the briny scent of the tide mingled with the acrid smoke from nearby tanneries, a sensory haze that heightens your tension as his fists clench, hinting at brawls that have left merchants bloodied in alleys, or worse, whispers of hired thugs wielding knives under cover of night. Your stance remains calm, hands raised in placation, invoking shared guild oaths to de-escalate, but paranoia surges, his eyes gleam with malice, perhaps plotting to torch your stacks, a common sabotage where flames leap from bale to beam, consuming fortunes in hours while watchmen look away for bribes. You parry his claims with evidence, ledgers of honest trades, witnesses from Billingsgate, feeling the rough parchment in your satchel as proof. Yet the confrontation's brutality lies in its potential ripple. Rumors spreading through taverns could alienate suppliers or provoke guild arbitration, favoring the connected, stripping your licenses and casting you into obscurity. The competitor leans closer, breath hot with ale, muttering of accidents, befalling overreaches, a threat that chills your spine like the river's draft, recalling tales of arsonists slipping past guards to ignite oils, leaving owners ruined amid the ashes, families scattered to beg at church doors under Henry II's feudal indifference. You offer compromise, a joint venture on minor deals, to soothe his ego, words measured like a diplomat's amid the sensory tumult of creaking ships and gulls screeching overhead, each second prolonging the risk of escalation into violence where a drawn dagger could end your days. Church bells toll for compline in the distance, signaling night's approach when dangers multiply, urging haste in resolution. As he grunts acceptance, backing off with lingering glares, relief washes over you, but vigilance remains. Survival demands watching shadows, fortifying doors against reprisals that could strike without warning. You turn toward home, the confrontation's echoes fueling nightmares of fire and feud. You offer hurried prayers at the Church of St. Mary Le Beau during Nones, the grand arches echoing with the chants of monks as you beseech St. Homobonus for mercy on your beleaguered trade, while the priest pressures you for donations you can ill afford without skimping on bribes to beadles elsewhere. This is a fiscal squeeze that threatens to crush your survival in the pious yet predatory world of 12th century London. Kneeling on the cold stone floor worn smooth by countless penitents, the air thick with incense curling from silver censers and the faint must of ancient tapestries depicting saints' lives, you clasp your hands, whispering pleas for protection against thieves, debts and disasters that plague merchants, your voice lost amid the Latin liturgy intoned from the altar. The church's bells, famed for their bow-like peal, have just ceased their midday call, drawing the faithful in this rhythm of devotion under Henry II's reign, where faith intertwines with commerce, yet the priest approaches post-prayer, his cassock rustling like judgment, extolling the need for alms to repair the nave. 10 groats, perhaps, his eyes appraising your fine tunic as if gauging your worth. Paranoia flickers, refuse and risk divine disfavor, or ecclesiastical whispers branding you miserly, alienating guild patrons, comply and drain funds needed for officials' palms, a brutal choice where every penny diverted invites calamity, like unpaid tolls leading to seizures or overlooked infractions sparking fines. The sensory solemnity, the flicker of beeswax candles casting golden glows, the faint echo of footsteps on flagstones, the bitter taste of humility on your tongue, contrasts with the inner turmoil, Visions of your strongbox emptying to beggary, if balances tip wrong, families evicted to Thames, side hovels amid the destitute. You nod reluctantly, fishing out a few farthings from your purse, their cold edges biting your fingers, a meager offering that draws a disapproving tut, amplifying the pressure in this house of God-turned arena of extraction, where even saints seem to demand tribute. Muttering additional invocations to the Virgin Mary for intercession, you rise unsteadily, knees aching from the stone, mind calculating reallocations, cut household ale, delay apprentice wages to cover the gap without inviting mutiny or theft. The priest retreats with a blessing that feels hollow, leaving you in the nave's dim light, the weight of obligation pressing like a yoke. Survival, a ceaseless juggle of spiritual and secular demands. As you exit into the bustling street, the church doors creaking shut behind you, resolve hardens to navigate the evening's remaining perils with heightened caution. You confer with your steward on spiraling household expenses in the modest hall of your home above the warehouse, the evening light fading through leaded windows as you slash costs on servants' wages to fund status symbols like silver plate and fine linens. You risk mutiny or theft from disgruntled staff that could fracture your household and expose your vulnerabilities in the treacherous social climb of 12th century London. Seated at the scarred oak table, its surface etched from years of use, you pore over the ledger with your trusted but weary steward, a gaunt man in simple hose and tunic, his quill scratching adjustments as you dictate cuts, reduce the cook's farthings by 2 per week, delay the maid's groat for mending, reallocating to purchase embroidered hangings that project prosperity to visiting merchants. The air carries the faint warmth of a dying hearth fire, crackling softly with the last embers of oak logs, mingled with the underlying scent of wool grease seeping from below, a constant reminder of your trade's precarious foundation amid Henry II's realm, where appearances dictate alliances, yet drain coffers like unseen leaks. Your steward nods gravely, his face illuminated by a single tallow candle's flicker, warning of grumblings among the staff, whispers of unfairness that could brew into betrayal, perhaps a pilfered silver spoon or loosened tongue revealing your strongbox's location to thieves. Paranoia tightens your chest. Disloyal servants fueled by resentment have toppled households before, slipping poisons into ale or unlocking doors for burglars under cover of night, leaving masters beggared and broken in this feudal society where loyalty bends to hunger. You weigh the risks, voice steady but mind racing, calculating how these symbols, a gilded chalice for the table, velvet cushions for guests, secure better marriages for your daughters, yet each expense invites disaster if trade falters, envisioning mutinous faces turning to rivals for employment, or worse, sabotage like spoiled dyes in vats. The steward's ink dries on the page, each entry a fragile barrier against ruin, as distant church bells toll for vespers, marking the day's wane in medieval rhythm and urging frugality amid the sensory hush of settling dusk. Brutal choices loom: skimp further and face revolt, or indulge and court debt's noose, survival, a relentless balance where household harmony teeters on penny's edge. As discussion concludes, you rise, the stool scraping wood, instructing vigilance against whispers, your steps heavy toward the parlor where alliances await forging. You host a wary business partner over sour wine in your dimly lit parlor. The room's half-timbered walls adorned with modest tapestries as you probe for betrayal in every word and gesture, aware that a false alliance could lead to sabotage shipments and financial collapse. This would doom you to the brutal fall from merchant to pauper in 12th century London's unforgiving undercurrents. The partner, a shrewd trader from York with a fox-like gaze, sits across the low table, his fingers drumming on the pewter goblet filled with vinegary claret imported at great cost, its tart bite mirroring the tension as you sip cautiously. The liquid's warmth failing to ease the chill of suspicion permeating the air heavy with beeswax from sputtering candles. Conversation flows like a guarded stream, discussing joint ventures in wool exports to Bruges, yet your ears strain for inconsistencies. A hesitant pause, an averted eye that might signal duplicity, knowing rivals often plant moles to undermine deals, perhaps by tipping pirates to your routes or forging delays that rot cargoes in holds. The parlour's hearth crackles faintly, casting wavering shadows that dance like conspirators, while the scent of spiced marchpane offered as a courtesy mingles with the underlying damp from the Thames, a sensory veil over the high stakes where one misplaced trust has shattered fortunes, leaving merchants imprisoned for debts or fleeing Gill's wrath under Henry II's edicts. You lean forward, voice measured, querying his recent travels and contacts, probing for links to your enemies, paranoia whispering of poisoned wine or slipped daggers, brutal tactics whispered in taverns where alliances fracture overnight. He counters with tales of profitable sales, but doubt festers. Is his enthusiasm feigned to lure you into overcommitment, triggering defaults that cascade to your ruin, family scattered to beg like the destitute haunting Cheapside? Church bells echo softly outside for Compline, signaling night's deepening dangers, urging haste in discernment amid the texture of embroidered cushions under your palms, symbols of status now at risk. As wine sours further on your tongue, you seal tentative terms with a handshake, his grip firm yet untrustworthy, relief tainted by vigilance against the sabotage that could manifest as tampered crates or vanished messengers. The meeting winds down, you escorting him to the door with polite nods, the barred portal, a thin shield against the world's malice. You pore over fragile contracts for overseas ventures in your study by candlelight, the parchment crackling under your fingers as you amend clauses against rampant piracy plaguing the channel routes. You know a single lost cargo could trigger a chain of defaults, ruining your reputation and casting you into the abyss of bankruptcy in the perilous seas of 12th century commerce under Plantagenet flags. The small room, lined with shelves of ledgers and maps, glows faintly from the tallow flame, its smoky haze blurring the inked lines as you scrutinize terms with a quill dipped in iron gall, adding stipulations for armed escorts or shared risks with insurers, each stroke a desperate ward against buccaneers who raid Flemish-bound ships, seizing dyes and fleeces to sell in black markets. The air holds the sharp scent of ink mingled with the musty odor of aged vellum, a sensory anchor amid visions of storm-tossed vessels splintering on rocks or crews slaughtered by cutlasses. Losses that echo through guilds as cautionary tales of merchants stripped bare, their names synonymous with failure. Your eyes strain in the dim light, tracing Latin phrases that bind partners across seas, yet paranoia surges, forged signatures or hidden loopholes planted by scribes in league with foes, brutal deceptions that have bankrupted peers, forcing sales of homes to Lombard lenders or flights to monasteries for sanctuary. The study's oak desk, scarred from endless labors, supports the documents like a scaffold, while distant waves lap the Thames outside, a mocking reminder of oceanic perils amplified by Henry II's wars stirring privateers. You calculate contingencies, alternate ports like Calais, divided cargoes to mitigate total loss, mind racing with arithmetic of pennies and groats, each amendment a thread in the web of survival where piracy's blade severs fortune swiftly, leaving families to face sheriff's seizures or debtors' prisons. Invoking St. Nicholas, patron of sailors, in a whispered prayer as bells toll faintly, You seal the revisions with wax, the hot drip hissing like a warning, doubt lingering over the fragility of paper against steel and storm. The candle gutters low, shadows lengthening like threats, urging rest yet fueling nightmares of empty holes and ruined ledgers. As you roll the parchments, securing them in a locked chest, resolve hardens for tomorrow's dispatches, the day's tolls weighing heavy. You navigate the chaotic Smithfield market, scouting new wool sources amid the clamor of lowing cattle and bleating sheep herded through muddy pens, shoving past aggressive beggars who claw at your cloak with desperate pleas for farthings. A single misstep in the churning crowds might mean being trampled by stampeding livestock, leaving you injured without recourse to healers whose fees could bankrupt even a prosperous merchant in 12th century London's unforgiving sprawl. The air thickens with the pungent stench of manure and unwashed animals, mingled with the metallic tang of blood from nearby slaughterhouses where butchers wield axes with rhythmic thuds. A sensory assault that heightens your vigilance as you weave through the throng, eyes scanning for reputable shepherds offering quality fleeces from upland pastures. Beggars press closer, their ragged tunics torn and faces gaunt from famine's grip, muttering curses when you push them aside with a firm arm, their persistence a reminder of the destitution that awaits if your trades falter, amplified by Henry II's realm, where the poor swarm markets like vermin, some turning to violence in desperation. Livestock surges suddenly, a bull breaking free from its handler, hooves pounding the earth like thunder, forcing you to dodge sideways, heart racing as you stumble into a puddle of filth. The splash soaks your hose and evokes visions of broken bones or gashes festering without leeches or poultices, remedies reserved for those who can spare groats amid guild restrictions on unlicensed healers. Vendors hawk their wares from stalls laden with sheared bundles, their voices piercing the din as you haggle tentatively with a weathered farmer, probing the wool's texture, coarse or fine. While keeping peripheral watch for pickpockets blending into the chaos, fingers light as ghosts on purses. The market's rhythm pulses with the toll of distant church bells for nonnies, marking midday's end in this medieval cadence, yet time feels suspended in peril, each step a gamble against accidents that claim limbs or lives, leaving families to beg as you once feared. Paranoia whispers of orchestrated distractions, beggars in cahoots with thieves, livestock loosed by rivals to injure competitors, brutal tactics in the survival arena where a lame merchant loses bargaining power overnight. You secure a sample bale, tying it with rough cord that bites your palms, relief tinged with exhaustion as you extricate yourself from the melee, shoving one last insistent pauper whose eyes burn with resentment. The path back to your warehouse clears slightly, but the market's echoes linger, a testament to the fragile line between scouting opportunity and courting disaster. You confront a thieving apprentice caught pilfering small vials of precious dyes from the warehouse shelves, the boy's wide-eyed panic evident in the dim lantern light as you administer harsh but fair discipline, a public reprimand and docked wages to deter others and maintain order without alienating your workforce. Their loyalty teeters on fear and fairness in the brutal hierarchies of 12th century London's guild-bound trades. The warehouse looms quiet in the late afternoon, stacks of crates casting long shadows as you grab the lad by his tunic collar, the coarse fabric twisting in your grip, his stammered excuses falling like scattered farthings amid the musty scent of indigo and madder that clings to the air, a betrayal that could erode profits like acid on metal if unchecked. Your voice booms sternly, echoing off timber beams, detailing the evidence, a hidden pouch discovered during routine checks, vials glinting accusingly, while apprentices gather warily, their faces a mix of shock and relief that it's not them facing judgment. They know such theft invites floggings or expulsion, perils that have driven youths to vagrancy, or worse, under Henry II's unforgiving laws. The boy's knees buckle as you pronounce sentence, a week's wages withheld in pennies, plus extra labours scrubbing vats, a punishment measured to sting without breaking spirit. For total alienation risks sabotage or flight, unravelling your operation like frayed wool. Paranoia surges. Was he acting alone, or bribed by rivals to deplete stocks? A common intrigue where stolen dies resurface in competitors' hands, triggering guild investigations that levy fines or revoke charters. The air grows heavy with tension, the faint drip of condensation from rafters punctuating your words as you invoke guild oaths and saintly witnesses, Saint Homer bonus for honest labour, reminding all of the consequences, visions of pillories in Cheapside where thieves endure public shame, stones pelting flesh amid jeering crowds. The apprentice nods tearfully, head bowed in submission, his calloused hands trembling as you release him. The moment a brutal lesson in survival where mercy tempers justice to preserve workforce cohesion, yet doubt lingers like dye stains on skin. Apprentices disperse murmuring, resuming tasks with heightened diligence, the scrape of crates a symphony of restored order, while you watch keenly for resentment sparks that could ignite mutiny. Church bells toll faintly outside, signaling the hour's shift, urging you onward as the day's tolls accumulate. The confrontation, a necessary forge hardening your enterprise against internal rot. You endure a strained social gathering at a rival merchant's home in a better quarter near Westminster, the opulent hall flickering with rushlight as you sift through gossip of Henry II's court intrigues, whispers of brewing wars with France or internal rebellions that could impose sudden taxes or embargoes devastating your wool trade. This is a cascade of ruin in the politically volatile world of 12th century England. Seated on cushioned benches around a laden table, the air rich with the aroma of roasted capon and spiced hippocras poured from silver ewers, you nod politely to the host, a sly silk trader whose smiles mask envy, as guests in fine velvets exchange tales, their voices a murmur over the crackle of a grand hearth, each rumour a potential dagger to your fortunes. The gossip flows like wine, the king's quarrels with Becket echoing in excommunications that unsettle markets, or royal demands for scutage fees draining coffers, perils that have bankrupted peers overnight, leaving estates seized and families dispersed amid the feudal web where favour shifts like winds. Your ears strain for details, embargoes on Flemish ports rumoured, taxes on dyes proposed, while paranoia whispers that this invitation masks probing for weaknesses, perhaps to exploit in guild halls or spread falsehoods eroding your credit. The hall's tapestries depict prosperous hunts, ironic against the brutal undercurrents where a misplaced word invites betrayal, visions of sudden edicts halting shipments, warehouses idle as debts mount like unpaid tithes. You contribute cautiously, sharing innocuous news of Thames traffic, sipping the tart hippocras that warms your throat, but not your suspicions. The liquid spice masking potential poisons in this arena of veiled threats. Guests lean in, faces flushed, recounting court scandals, Eleanor's influence stirring plots that ripple to commerce, amplifying fears of tariffs spiking pennies per bale, survival hinging on navigating these whispers without entanglement. Church bells toll for Compline beyond the shuttered windows, marking night's embrace in medieval solemnity, urging discretion amid the sensory indulgence of marchpane suites and lute strains. As conversation wanes, you extract politely, mind churning with gleaned intelligence, contingencies for embargoes, alliances against taxes, the gathering, a double-edged sword, forging insights, yet risking exposure. Stepping into the cooling street, the rival's door closing behind, vigilance sharpens for the morrow's risks. You agonize over investing in risky silk imports from distant Constantinople, seated in your study amid flickering candlelight that casts elongated shadows on faded maps pinned to the walls, calculating the perils of shipwrecks on treacherous Mediterranean routes or wars between Crusaders and Saracens disrupting supply lines. Overcommitment has driven many merchants to the brink of suicide or outright beggary in the volatile economy of 12th century London. The parchment under your fingers, brittle and ink-stained, lists potential profits, silk bolts fetching triple the price of wool in elite markets like Westminster. Yet each figure evokes dread, your abacus beads clicking like a countdown to ruin as you tally costs. High-interest loans from Lombards, tariffs levied by Henry II's customs at Dover, and the ever-present threat of gales swallowing galleys whole, crews lost to the deep without trace. The air in the room grows stuffy with the acrid smoke of tallow, mingling with the faint spice residue from sample swatches you've handled, a tantalizing scent that belies the brutality of the trade where one storm-tossed vessel can erase fortunes, leaving traders to face bailiffs seizing homes or debtors' prisons echoing with despair. Paranoia grips you as you trace routes on the map, fingers following ink lines across seas fraught with pirates, Byzantine corsairs or Norman privateers who ransack cargoes, selling spoils in black markets, while owners back home slit wrists in despair, tales whispered in cheapside taverns of men jumping from London Bridge, their widows reduced to spinning for farthings amid the destitute. You weigh contingencies, diversify with partial shipments, insure through guild pools at exorbitant rates, but doubt festers. Wars flare unpredictably, like the king's quarrels with France, halting ports and stranding investments in foreign warehouses to rot or be confiscated. The study's chill seeps from stone floors, mirroring the cold sweat on your brow as arithmetic reveals the razor edge. Success could elevate your status, funding noble alliances, failure cascades to defaults, Lombard lenders foreclosing with merciless efficiency, your family evicted to Thames, side slums where disease claims the weak. Invoking Saint Christopher for safe passages in a murmured prayer, as distant bells toll for Matin's memory, you hesitate over the commitment, visions of beggary haunting like ghosts, overextended peers found dangling from rafters, a brutal end to ambition. The candle gutters low, wax dripping like wasted silver, urging decision amid the sensory hush of night, survival. A gamble where silk's allure masks the noose of overreach. Finally, you jot tentative figures, rolling the parchment with trembling hands, resolve fractured but necessary for tomorrow's pursuits. You fortify your warehouse against the encroaching nightfall with reinforced barred doors and hired armed guards patrolling the perimeter along the Thames banks. Your heart pounding with the rhythm of hammer strikes, securing iron latches as tales of ruthless gangs breaching similar defenses to loot and murder echo in your mind. This is a constant spectre in the lawless underbelly of 12th century London's darkening streets. The air cools rapidly with the setting sun, carrying the brackish scent of the river mingled with the sharp tang of pitch from torches. The guards ignite, their flames crackling to life and casting jittery shadows on the timber walls, illuminating potential weak points, loose planks or unguarded vents, where intruders might pry with crowbars under cover of fog. You direct the men, burly former soldiers in padded gambesons, armed with cudgels and short swords, with urgent commands, their grunts punctuating the effort as you test each bar, feeling the cold metal bite your palms. Paranoia surging from stories shared in guild halls of warehouses gutted overnight, owners' throats slit in their beds, families left to grieve amid ashes. The Thames murmurs ominously nearby, barges creaking like accomplices, a waterway that ferries thieves as easily as goods, gangs from Southwark crossing under moonless skies to target prosperous merchants like you, drawn by whispers of hidden strongboxes brimming with groats. Your pulse races as you recount a recent horror. A competitor found bludgeoned, his dyes scattered like blood. Perpetrators vanished into alleys patrolled by corrupt watchmen who take bribes to avert eyes. Reinforcements include chained mastiffs snarling in the yard, their barks echoing warnings, yet doubt lingers. Dogs can be poisoned with tainted meat, guards bought off with silver, brutal realities in Henry II's realm, where justice favors the noble, leaving middling folk to fend alone. The sensory assault heightens tension, the clank of weapons, the acrid smoke-stinging eyes, the chill wind whispering through cracks like invaders' breaths. Invoking Saint Michael for protection against evil in a hasty prayer, as church bells toll for vespers, you position sentries at key points, their vigilant eyes scanning the gloom for silhouettes, survival demanding such fortifications lest dawn reveal plundered crates and bloodied floors. As the last latch secures with a thud, you retreat indoors, the weight of vigilance pressing like armor, mind racing with contingencies for breaches that could strip your life's work in hours. You share a meager dinner of overcooked venison pie and withered vegetables with your anxious family in the dimly lit hall, the hearth's feeble fire casting wavering glows on their faces as you recount the day's near misses, damaged crates, extortionate bribes, treacherous negotiations. You instill in them the constant vigilance required to avoid slipping back into ruin, a fragile barrier against the brutal reversals that claim merchant households in 12th century London. Seated around the scarred table, you carve the tough pie with a dull knife, its crust crumbling like eroding fortunes, the meat's gamey flavor overpowered by char from the communal oven down the lane, a thrift measure that spares fuel but risks undercooking, evoking fears of flux or worse amid the city's rampant ailments. Your wife portions the meager servings onto wooden trenchers, her hands steady but eyes shadowed with worry, as children listen wide-eyed to tales of beadles' demands and rivals' threats. Lessons in survival where one lax moment invites catastrophe, thieves scaling walls or false deals draining coffers. The air holds the smoky warmth of the fire, mingled with the faint must of stored wool below, a sensory cocoon that belies the outer perils. Your voice measured yet urgent, recounting the Lombard loans chains, the guild meetings intrigues, each anecdote a thread weaving caution into their minds, reminding them of ancestors who fell from grace to beg at Billingsgate. Paranoia tempers the meal. A knock at the door could be bailiffs, a strange taste poison from disgruntled servants, brutal possibilities in Henry II's indifferent domain, where families shatter like dropped ewers. You emphasize watchfulness, bar doors, question strangers, safeguard keys, as the pie's scant filling sustains but doesn't satisfy. Mirroring the merchant's lot, enough to endure, not thrive, with every bite a reminder of rationed groats against disasters. Church bells toll compline outside, signaling rest's approach in medieval solemnity. Yet conversation lingers on contingencies, hide valuables, flee to kin if ruined, instilling resilience amid visions of eviction to muddy alleys where disease claims the unwary. Your son nods solemnly, daughter clutching a doll of rags, their innocence tempered by your words, the family's unity a bulwark against isolation's despair. As the meal concludes, trenchers cleared with linen cloths, you rise wearily, the day's tolls etched in fatigue, preparing for evening rituals with heightened awareness. You study faded maps of trade routes in your study. By flickering candlelight, the parchment yellowed and cracked from years of use as you devise detours around bandit-infested roads, snaking through the English countryside and beyond. You know one ambushed caravan laden with your dyes and fleeces could wipe out your accumulated wealth in a hail of arrows and blades, leaving you destitute in the merciless feudal landscape of 12th century London. The candle's flame dances erratically, casting quivering shadows across the ink-drawn lines, depicting paths from Cheapside to Dover, then across the Channel to Flemish markets, each curve a potential snare, where outlaws, dispossessed knights, or starving peasants lurk in forests like Epping or along the Watling Street, preying on merchants with ruthless efficiency. Your finger traces alternate routes, perhaps via river barges on the Thames to safer ports, calculating added tolls in pennies and days lost. The abacus beads clicking softly in the quiet room where the air holds the faint must of old paper mingled with the sharp wax scent, a sensory hush broken only by the distant hoot of an owl outside. Paranoia builds with each scenario, envisioning hooded figures emerging from mist, swords flashing to seize crates, drivers slain, your investments scattered like spilled groats, triggering defaults to Lombards and guild blacklisting that cascades to ruin, family begging at church doors amid the destitute you once rose above. The map's details blur in the dim light, rivers like the Seine marked with warnings of French skirmishes under Henry II's wars, amplifying risks where a single raid erases ledgers of profit, merchants found robbed and gutted by roadsides, tales that chill your spine like the study's draft seeping through shutters. You mutter contingencies, hire more guards, split cargoes into smaller trains, mind racing with arithmetic of survival, each detour a gamble against time and cost, where delays invite rot in wool or market shifts devaluing goods overnight. Invoking Saint Christopher in a whispered prayer for travelers' safety, as faint bells toll Compline's echo, you roll the maps with care, securing them in a locked chest, the day's anxieties coalescing into nocturnal dread of loss's brutality. The candle sputters low, wax pooling like wasted silver, urging retreat yet fueling resolve to safeguard tomorrow's ventures amid the shadows. You patrol your property in the gathering dusk, the twilight haze settling over the warehouse and home, as you check locks on doors and windows with methodical tugs, listening intently for intruders' footsteps in the quiet alleys. You're tormented by visions of accidental fires, sparked by a stray ember, spreading through the timber structures to consume everything in an inferno that devours fortunes in hours, a perennial terror in the densely packed buildings of 12th century London. The air cools with night's approach, carrying the brackish whisper of the Thames mingled with the faint smoke from neighboring hearths. Each creak of wood under your feet amplifying paranoia as you circle the perimeter, hand on your dagger's hilt, eyes scanning shadows where thieves might lurk behind crates or in winds leading to Cheapside. Your fingers test the iron padlocks, cold and unyielding, secured earlier with guards now stationed at posts, their torches flickering like wary sentinels, yet doubt persists. A forgotten latch, a bribed watchman, could invite catastrophe, gangs slipping in to pilfer, or worse, set blazes with oil-soaked rags that leap from bale to beam in the dry wool's embrace. Visions assail you, flames roaring through half-timbered walls, dyes exploding in bursts of color, your screams lost amid the crackle as inventory turns to ash, leaving you to face dawn's ruin, with bailiffs claiming remnants for debts, family homeless amid the charred skeletons of prosperity. The property's outlines blur in dimming light, the rivers murmur a deceptive calm, masking potential escapes for arsonists, brutal actors in merchant tales where envy ignites literal destruction, owners wakened by heat only to perish or beg, stripped of status under Henry II's indifferent sky. You pause at each corner, ears straining for rustles, rats or robbers. The sensory veil of dusk heightens fears, the chill wind brushing your tunic like ghostly fingers warning of vulnerability. Invoking St. Florian against fire in a silent plea, as stars prick the deepening sky, you reinforce a loose shutter with a nail hammered hastily, the thud echoing your pounding heart, survival demanding such ceaseless guardianship, lest negligence invites the blaze that erases legacies. Satisfied for the moment, you head toward the chapel, the patrol's toll weighing on weary limbs. You kneel in evening prayers to the Virgin Mary in your cramped chapel adjoining the hall, the small space illuminated by a single beeswax candle on the altar, casting a soft glow on the painted icon of the Madonna. You plead for divine safeguard against the poisons slipped into wine by envious servants or the daggers drawn by rivals in dark alleys, threats that shadow your modest success in the intrigue-laden society of 12th century London. The stone floor bites coldly into your knees through the thin rush mat, a penitential discomfort as you clasp hands, whispering Latin verses from the Ave Maria, the words, a rhythmic plea for intercession amid the faint incense scent lingering from morning mass, mingled with the underlying damp of the Thames seeping through walls. Your mind races with supplications. Protect from the vial of hemlock hidden in a traitor's pouch, the blade glinting in moonlight as assassins hired by competitors strike for your strongbox's secrets, brutal perils that have claimed peers in silent nights, bodies discovered bloated in the river or convulsing in agony, families shattered without recourse in Henry II's courts favoring the connected. The chapel's intimacy amplifies introspection, the icon's serene eyes seeming to regard your fears, paranoia weaving through prayers, a disgruntled apprentice lacing your ale, a guild foe plotting murder disguised as robbery, each scenario a dagger to peace, eroding the dignity of your rise. The candle's flame steadies your breath, its warm light contrasting the chill dread as you recount the day's survivals, bribes paid, deals sealed, beseeching mercy from poison's slow burn or dagger's swift pierce, threats amplified in tales of envenomed marchpane or ambushes in Smithfield, leaving merchants' legacies in ruins. Church bells toll compline outside, their peal a call to rest in medieval devotion, yet your invocations linger, fingers tracing a wooden rosary, each bead a step toward solace amid the sensory hush of wax and stone. Rising slowly, joints aching from the kneel, you extinguish the candle with a puff, smoke curling like unresolved worries, resolve fortified by faith's fragile armor against envy's arsenal. The chapel door creaks shut behind you, transitioning to reflections on higher alliances. You weigh the prospects of forging ties with fickle nobles for patronage and protection in the quiet of your study, the candle's dying flame illuminating a list of potential allies from Henry II's court circles, tallying the exorbitant gifts like fine silks or jeweled brooches and favors such as discounted dyes that they demand in return. Outright rejection might invite targeted harassment through false accusations of treason or smuggling, unraveling your hard-fought status in the intrigue-riddled hierarchies of 12th century London. Seated at the desk, its surface cluttered with wax-sealed missives from minor lords, you ponder the calculations on parchment, 20 groats for a hunting falcon, endless invitations to feasts draining your cellars. Each expense is a chain linking you to their whims, yet essential shields against rivals' plots or royal audits that could strip your guild privileges overnight. The air hangs heavy with the scent of melted wax and aged ink, a sensory veil over the paranoia that surges. Nobles like the Earl of Essex, known for shifting loyalties, might accept your overtures only to betray later, whispering lies to the sheriff that paint you as a usurer or tax evader. These are brutal tactics that have seen merchants dragged to Newgate's dungeons, their families scattered to beg amid the destitute at Ludgate. Your quill hovers, sketching pros and cons, mind envisioning the double-edged blade, Alliance brings elevated contracts, perhaps knighthood's edge, but demands servitude. Favors like smuggling untaxed goods, risking execution if discovered. Survival is a delicate dance where refusal sparks vendettas, anonymous tips leading to warehouse raids, or planted evidence of fraud. The study's chill deepens with night's advance, the faint toll of distant bells echoing Compline's call, urging resolution in this medieval solitude, where feudal bonds bind like iron, yet snap under pressure, leaving the unprotected to face assassins' blades or legal nooses. You mutter a prayer to St. Thomas Becket, martyr against overreach, seeking guidance amid visions of courtly banquets turning to interrogations, your rise threatened by the very heights you seek. The weight presses, each tally a farthing's toll on your soul, paranoia whispering of spies among servants reporting your deliberations, amplifying the brutality where ambition courts peril. Finally, you set the quill down, deciding on a tentative approach letter, the parchment folded with care, resolve tempered by dread of the obligations ahead. You dispatch a payment to a demanding supplier via an unreliable messenger in the dimly lit hall, the rushlight sputtering on the table as you document every detail meticulously on duplicate parchments against potential fraud or loss. You're aware that a misplaced missive carrying your silver pennies could ignite lawsuits from the Flemish trader, claiming non-receipt, draining your reserves in protracted guild arbitrations or royal courts that favor the connected in 12th century London's litigious commerce. Standing by the barred door, you hand the sealed pouch, heavy with counted groats, to the hooded courier, a grizzled man from the docks whose shifty eyes and ale-tainted breath heighten suspicions. His promise of swift delivery to Billingsgate, a fragile vow amid the perils of muddy roads plagued by highwaymen or simple mishaps like flooded fords. The air carries the cool draft from cracks, mingled with the metallic tang of coins recently handled, a sensory reminder of vulnerability as you inscribe the transaction. Date by Saint's calendar, amount in pennies and farthings, witnesses marks from your steward. Each stroke of the quill is a barrier against deceit, where suppliers forge claims of undelivered funds, dragging merchants to debtors' benches, or worse, public floggings for evasion. Paranoia grips as the messenger departs into the night, his footsteps fading on cobbles, visions assaulting you of intercepted bags, thieves melting silver into bars, or the man himself pocketing and vanishing, sparking accusations that cascade to seized shipments. Your reputation tarnished like tarnished coin amid guild whispers. The hall's shadows lengthen, the hearth's embers glowing faintly, amplifying fears of legal entanglements under Henry II's justices, where lost proofs mean forfeited collateral, perhaps your warehouse itself auctioned to cover debts. Families reduced to tenements teeming with disease. You invoke Saint Evo, patron of lawyers, in a hushed plea, sealing the duplicate with wax pressed by your signet, the hot drip hissing like a warning. Survival hinging on this thread of trust in a world where fraud lurks like fog over the Thames. The door bolted behind, you file the record in your chest, mind churning with contingencies, send a second rider, demand receipts. The day's ceaseless threats culminate in this final act of guarded exchange. You collapse onto your lumpy feather bed in the bedchamber as the Compline bells echo faintly from St. Paul's through the shuttered windows, the tolling a solemn close to the day's relentless barrage of threats, from bribes and betrayals to the spectres of plague and piracy. These have left your body weary and mind frayed, your sleep soon haunted by flickering nightmares of poverty's cruel return, where warehouses burn and fortunes dissolve. Yet in this moment of respite, you cling to a fragile hope that tomorrow's dawn might bring the stability you fought so hard to secure in the unforgiving world of 12th century London. The mattress sags under your weight, stuffed with down from your own traded goods, but uneven from years of use. The woolen blankets heavy and comforting against the night's chill, seeping from timber walls. A sensory embrace that eases the knots in your muscles, strained from patrols and hagglings. Your eyes close amid the quiet, the distant river's murmur, a lullaby tainted by worry, thoughts drifting to families sleeping nearby, their futures tethered to your vigilance. The weight of survival is not the gnawing hunger of old, but the insidious fears that accompany wealth. Thieves at gates, rivals in shadows, disasters lurking like unseen currents. Paranoia lingers even in exhaustion. Visions intruding of beadles pounding doors for unpaid fines, or ships sinking with cargoes uninsured, cascading to beggary's embrace, where you scrounge scraps in Cheapside once more, under Henry II's distant rule that offers no mercy to the fallen. Yet, as breath slows, you whisper a final prayer to the Virgin Mary for peaceful rest and divine protection. The wooden cross on the wall, a silent guardian, allowing a thread of dignity to persist amid the hardships. Small acts of resilience like today's salvage deals foster quiet pride in your merchant's endurance. The bells fade, night's hush enveloping the city, your body surrendering to slumber's pull, dreams weaving through perils but ending with glimmers of advancement, perhaps noble favor secured, trades flourishing. This is a conclusion to the day's trials that renews resolve for the morrow, where survival struggles continue, but hope endures in the rhythm of medieval life. Congratulations, weary merchant, you've survived another grueling day in the treacherous markets of 12th century London. You've navigated bribes, betrayals, and the ever-looming shadows of ruin, emerging with your fortunes intact. For now, as the Compline bells fade into the night, let your mind drift peacefully, knowing you've endured the perils of prosperity with cunning and resolve. But rest not too soundly. In Episode 4 of Surviving the Feudal Age, you'll ascend to the ranks of the elite professional, a wealthy knight or royal advisor, filthy rich with lands, influence and luxuries beyond your wildest dreams. Yet with great power comes even greater dangers. Political intrigue that could end in a dagger's thrust, high-stakes battles where one misstep means execution, and enemies at court scheming to topple you from your lofty perch. Will you survive the deadly games of the upper echelons, or will ambition claim you at last? If you've enjoyed this immersive journey through medieval survival, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more episodes, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter. Sweet dreams, and we'll see you in the halls of power.